What's up, buddy?
How's it going, man? I just wanted to let you know I got my 12 o'clock no shut. So use me as you need me, brother.
I get. Well, welcome everyone. This is our Thursday morning production call. My name's Joe Martinez. We are here in the Chris Cook hierarchy, and we are going to learn about getting rid of some think about it or avoiding think about it. Um, this is an hour long training, so we do humbly ask, pull out a pen and paper, write down some notes. We're going to go over quite a few things. Uh, the whole goal, right, is grab something that you're not doing, start applying it. Don't go out and change your entire procedure. That's not what we're saying, right? We're just teaching you little tips, right, that have helped us over the years, weeks, as we're continuing to work. And then what we humbly ask is anything that you learn off of today's call, if you can post it in band, it really does help everyone as a community. Being able to post like, hey, you know what, y'all said, try this, and I have, and I helped the family, and it's been helping me. If y'all can post that in band, it really, really does help a ton of other agents so they can go out and grab it and apply it to their appointments. So we're going to get started. So today's topic is the think about it. Like I always like to say, is this is very live training. The reason I say it's live is we get a couple of our top producers and we kind of ask them like, hey, what are you having trouble with this week? What should we refocus on? Because what happens throughout your production career here, right, is a couple of weeks you start focusing on, let's just say, hey, your show rate, and you get really good at booking appointments and they're showing up, but then because you're focused on this, right, this other little area starts to kind of go down. So it's just a consistent, always working on yourself in production. Even us, like I said, one of the reasons we even started hosting this is because it helps us to run our own appointments, because these are things like, hey, you know what, I haven't refocused on that, or like let's do this, let me start hitting on these points. So actually going through some of the points today, it's like, hey, you know what, I'm going to refocus on this because I've gotten quite a bit of think about it these past couple of weeks. So I'm super excited. Again, we're going to do the think about it. And really, before we dig into like material, I want y'all to know it's not, I think a lot of times we start to consider, hey, how do I overcome a think about it, right? Like once you've arrived to it, and in reality, you don't overcome it, right? But there's a whole bunch of things in place that help you prevent them. And that's the biggest thing we want to teach today. So we're going to go like from very beginning, from booking the appointment, all the way to as you're writing an application of ways to avoid it. James, one time you were talking about on one of our trainings where you said, um, if you ran a perfect appointment and did absolutely everything you were supposed to do, right, you're closing at let's just say 100%. But as we run appointments, right, we forget to make sure both are here, right? Make sure it's a Zoom appointment. Make sure I hit the role in purpose. Make sure, right? And then as we knock things off the list, right, because we're not paying attention or we get a little lazy, realize our close rate, right, takes a really big hit. And again, don't go out and try to do everything we're talking about. Just start adding them to your appointments, right? And that you'll see your close rate start to increase. So again, you're running appointments no matter what. These are things that help us avoid a think about it. And that's the biggest word I want y'all to remember today. Once you're at the think about it, guess what? Good luck trying to convince them to say yes right there and then. It's done, right? What you can do is add a couple of these things to avoid the think about it. So we're going to start from the very beginning, which is booking an appointment. And again, this is super interactive. I want to make sure everyone understands, right? Please feel free to unmute yourself, ask any questions, as long as it's topic related. We love to make sure we answer all the questions for y'all. It gets a little hard sometimes to go through the chat if you have a question, so please feel free, raise your hand or just unmute. But we're going to start with booking the appointments and ways to avoid think about it. One of the biggest things that we've learned with all our numbers as a collect is the Zoom appointment. Okay, if you are running appointments, right, you want to avoid a think about it, you avoid it by making sure you're doing the Zoom appointment. And I shouldn't even say adding, you should be running Zoom appointments, right? Like James, you always love to talk about it because we were stubborn again. We refused to do Zoom appointments. I was only trying to do them through the phone, and my show rate was really low, my close rate was really low, and I was stubborn for a good 6 months when COVID hit and we converted to virtual appointments. And I remember, Elijah, I remember watching you and Grant do just crushing it. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I went from like a 90% close rate in a home, and I'm like, well, everyone's going virtual. And I'm like, sweet, I'm gonna book phone appointments. And dude, I couldn't, I think I went like 2.5 months, dude, without writing an app.
I think a lot of people struggled with that transition, dude. My big struggle with switching to virtual was also the show rate initially. I want to say my show rate was like 30% for a couple weeks as we were working out the kinks, ironing out the scripting, and just getting used to a new process.
So, right, booking a Zoom appointment, I want to give y'all a couple tips on it, especially as a new agent or someone that is not currently running Zoom appointments. Where I found my biggest hole in that was I was asking. So when I was booking the appointment, I was asking, "Hey, do y'all want to show up? Do you, tomorrow at 3 o'clock? Do you prefer the phone or Zoom?" And let me tell you, everyone's going to say over the phone, right? So do not ask that question. It is not a choice, right? The way we do business is through Zoom. So a couple of tips of how to get the information and let them know you're booking a Zoom. So what I do is once I've confirmed, right, 3 o'clock tomorrow, Amber, that's going to be a good time for you. Great. And then I confirm all their information, right? So I'm usually ending it with, okay, so we have no health conditions. Perfect. Hey, Amber, what's a good email address to send you the appointment confirmation? I want y'all to pay attention to that. What's a good email to send you the appointment confirmation? Not to send you the Zoom link. I haven't talked about Zoom up until this point. I'm just letting them know right. I've confirmed all their information. I have the time, and I'm just simply saying what's a good email to send you the appointment confirmation. It's going to have my information for you. Then they give me their email, and only when they give me their email, the reason you do it this way, if you do it the other way, you tell them, hey, I'm going to send you a Zoom link. What's your email? They're going to be like, nope, I don't have an email. Right? So, hey, what's a good email so I can send you the appointment confirmation? They're going to give it to you. Great. Once I have it, I confirm their email. Amber, it was 123 Blair, right at gmail.com. Perfect. Hey, Amber, in that email, it's going to have my information, and I have us down for 3 o'clock tomorrow. Have you ever used Zoom before? No, yes, whatever it may be. Great. Inside my email, you're going to have a Zoom link on there. All you have to do is click on that link, and I'll be able to share my screen, and I'll be able to go over your options. It's not a choice. I run Zoom appointments. And then I like to even re-edify, like, hey, so tomorrow at 3 o'clock, how do you think you're going to be able to hop on? Are you going to use your laptop, computer, or phone, or a tablet? Whatever they tell me, right? So because if it's a tablet or a phone, you get to say, hey, if you don't have Zoom on your phone, it will make you download it. You don't have to create an account, just download it. And once you do that, you can go back to my email, click on the link, and I'll be able to share my screen. If you're doing it through your laptop or computer, all you got to do is click on the link and I'll be able to share my screen. Elijah, anything you want to add? I know you're really good at sending them the email and making them open it for you right there and then.
Yeah, that's a really good way, I think, to just improve your show rate. When they pull up the email and see the Zoom link and see the time while you're on the phone with them. One of the things that I throw in right after I book the appointment, or sometimes I'll mention it right before I book it, and I think this kind of helps set expectations for the call, which will inadvertently help you avoid some percentage of think about it. And I want to preface this too, like I still get think about it every week. The goal is just to minimize the amount that you're getting, because to a degree, if you run 10 appointments, you may get lucky and write 10 applications, but some people do need to think about it. But I let them know really what the purpose of us getting on Zoom is. And I'll let them know, Joe, like, hey, my job's pretty simple, man. I'm the agent assigned to Arizona. My job is to get some options out to you and Sandra, make sure you guys understand them. You know what the coverage does, what it costs. And if we find one you like, I'm the guy that's going to help you get approved for it. Does that sound good? Cool. And we said about 6 o'clock tomorrow. It's like really nonchalant, but just letting them know this is what we're going to do, and being really clear on what your job is. Because if you're not, you're going to get appointments where as soon as you get them on Zoom, they're going to be like, all right, well, let's get into this. How much does it cost? And it's hard to run a good appointment when that's what they say out the gate.
Love it. Love it. Right. So another thing about it, think about it. Please write this down. And this is probably the hardest thing for an agent to do because we are excited somebody showed up for our appointment, right? Or when we're nervous and we're booking an appointment, we forget to ask this question, but the spouse, the other person, okay? So write this down. Do not run a one-legged appointment. It is the hardest thing because they finally showed up. And for you to say, hey, you know what, right now is not going to be a good time. I do need, right, Mary to be here so that I can go over the coverage for both of y'all. When's going to be a good time, right? And rebooking it right there and then. When's going to be a good time? It is the hardest thing to do, but I promise y'all, you do not want to run a one-legged appointment. They're going to tell you I'm the decision maker in the house. No, I don't need them. I only want coverage on me. Like you're going to hear absolutely every excuse in the book. And I promise you, when you get to the very end, they're going to say, hey, you know what? Great. I need to think about it. Let me talk to Tom and then I'll let you know. Okay. How do I avoid the think about it? Again, this is just increasing or should I say decreasing think about it really in this case, right? So just again, avoiding a one-legged appointment is the hardest thing to do because it crushes our soul. Like, man, they showed up, Elijah, but maybe I can explain it good enough. Why? I would just love to give y'all a little bit of science or what really happens and why you should never do this because you almost kill your lead at this point. It's because you do a great job running an appointment and you explained it, you pulled out their why, you gave them the options, you explained how it worked. Usually it's critical period, so it's even a little bit harder, a little more harder to explain, right? Because we're talking about 12 months, 9 months worth of protection and whatever we're doing. And you do an amazing job and they say, hey, great, let me go talk to, right, Sandra. Thanks, Elijah. Let me talk to Sandra and I'll get back with you tomorrow, right? Let you know which one I want to do. Right? They're gonna do a horrible job of explaining what you just took an hour to do, right? Or 45 minutes or 30. I want y'all to think about that. You build rapport. You went over a role and purpose. You drew out their need, their why, and you did a great job explaining the coverage. Listen, they're not gonna go run an appointment on their spouse, right? They're gonna turn around, John, and say, hey, so he said, I think it's $10,000 for $159. You want to do that? They're like, no, absolutely not. What's wrong with you? Like they're even telling them stuff like, why did you think that's a good? Well, they said, you know, Elijah told me it would protect you, and it was 6 months or 9 months, right? Because we looked at the budget. She's like, no, we're not spending $170 for $10,000. We're not. Your appointment, right? Like the lead is dead at that point. Do not let that happen, right? And that only that happens because we do a one-legged appointment, and then we put the responsibility on them, right? Think about it. I struggle running a perfect appointment and making sure I hit all the points and doing all these things, and then we hand it off to the client to go explain it to their spouse. Right? They're not going to do a good job, and the lead is dead at that point. Like it's good luck, right? It's going to be less than 10%. They actually call you back and they're going to want this coverage. Again, the whole point is to just minimize, think about it. It's making sure the spouse is there. A couple of tips, James, Elijah, or anyone that you want to give, right? If you do get that one-legged appointment, what I like to do is be like, hey, you know what? John, I do need Mary here. Since it's still insurance, I do got to ask them physically, right? A couple of questions to make sure I can get the coverage. And then we kind of go through a couple of scenarios to make sure you even need this. Sometimes you don't need it. So when's a good time tomorrow, right? Or tonight that Mary will be home, right? And then I like to do it as soon as possible because I've already got him to commit, right? Or her. So I really like if it's a one-legged appointment that I didn't know was going to be a one-legged appointment, I like to get it immediately, right? So like, hey, well, Mary's at the grocery store, or no worries, right? And then again, calm, like Elijah was saying, right? Like, hey, not a big deal. So she's at the grocery store. My wife goes all the time to the grocery store. She probably takes about an hour. What are you thinking? About an hour and a half. So it's 3 o'clock right now. So 4:30. You think that's a good time to call you back? Both of y'all will be here. Yeah, she should be back by then. I'll text her to make sure. Perfect. I love it, right? Like get it right there and then. Don't even push it off for tomorrow, right? Like get that appointment today. If it's a one-legged appointment, right? I like to rebook it that same day. And within like minutes to an hour, right? Like, because they'll say, well, no, she's not home from work yet. She had to work a few. Okay, sweet. Well, she's on her way. Great. I'll call you back in 30 minutes. Will she be back in 30 minutes? Yep. Like I'm getting it right there and then so that I can have both of them show up. James, Elijah, anything y'all like to do to make sure you get them on there?
Yeah, and if they try to give you pushback, I do the same thing. So I'll try to book it for the same day. So I'll find out like, hey, what time do they get home, their work, what time, how long would it take them to get there? Worst case, if you have to book it for the next day, do it. I mean, I've even gone to next week when they're both available. I mean, because if you run that one appointment, I mean, one-legged appointment, whether it's just with him, I mean, you pretty much wasted that lead there. So I'd rather wait a week if I have to follow up next week when the weekend when they're both off. That way I know they're both there and they're serious. So I just let them know, hey, they try to give you pushback, just be like, I kind of just tell them like, hey, this is dealing with insurance. So I just got to put eyes on the face and just kind of, get their okay, make sure everything is, and that way you'll actually have something to think about. And that way, if both of y'all have some questions, I can answer them as well. And then I go right back into closing. Hey, what time you think she'll be available? What time she gets out? Well, we're not off till later on. It's like I run late appointments sometimes too as well. But a lot of times we get tempted as well just because we only have that one appointment and we're like, I'm gonna run it anyways. This is the lucky one. And it's not. And don't do that to yourself. That's why it's important to have more than one appointment scheduled. Um, and even if it's just them two, they don't have a spouse, don't run it. Little tip, if they're working, driving, doing anything else at the grocery store, because they're not paying attention to you.
Oh, that's a good point, right? Like,
Reschedule those too as well. Like, hey, you're at the grocery. Hey, perfect. How long you think about an hour and a half? I'll call you back. Same thing. So whether if it's just them or the spouse is not there, make sure you do reschedule those as well because you're gonna get to think about it as well because they're not paying attention because they're busy doing something else.
yeah.
I
And what,
found that
oh,
real quick. I was just going to say, like, in the 6 years that I've been running appointments, pretty much every single week at this point, I mean, it's got to be probably over 1,000, maybe a couple thousand appointments that I've run. And speaking from experience, I would say it's easier to bam fam book a meeting from a meeting, book a more solid appointment where they're both going to be there than it would be to close a one-legger and hope that they explain it right and hope that they reach back out to you and hope that they pick an option and buy. And so our job's hard enough as it is, man. Make it make it a little easier on yourself
We'll
and get
send
them
them
both
with the
there.
hey,
we'll
you
send
gave
them
me
with the
some
real script.
PTS. You gave me some PTSD with the word hope, Elijah. I used to tell my regional manager in the restaurant business, well, I hope this happens. He goes, let me tell you, Joe, hope is not a business strategy. Right. So
Facts.
think about that, right?
Facts.
When you run a one leg, you're hoping that other person's going to explain it. And let me tell you from
Yeah.
some great business mentors, hope is not a business strategy. So
When they
A
don't
lot has
rely
to
on
go right. A lot has to go right for a one-legger to turn into an app. You got to be
we
on
have
your A game for sure. I wanted to point out something Ash said. Shout out to you, Ash. I use that a lot. What you put in the chat, bringing up the beneficiary. If somebody's giving you pushback on, well, I make the decisions, I pay the mortgage, whatever people say. No worries. I totally get that. You're the person I want to be talking to, but I imagine your wife would be the beneficiary. Is that right? Yep. Cool. Well, I just want to make sure she knows what she's going to be the beneficiary of if you kick the bucket. Is that fair? And just try to get them both on there. That's a really good point, Ash.
Yep.
Question.
Yep.
Hi, Joe.
Hey.
Do we ever explain insurable interest in an appointment when you're running one-legged and somebody is giving you that pushback and explaining that okay, so like I'm still in pre-licensing, so all of this stuff is it's in my head of like, make sure you do this so that you don't lose your license. So bear with this question as I try to figure out how to word this. If somebody's pushing back and saying, no, I make all of the decisions, would it be good to say something like, well, it's important, from a legal standpoint that all parties involved in this contract are here for this meeting. I am required by law as the agent to make sure that I'm obtaining consent from all parties involved in the contract. Or
So
is that just like too much?
yeah, you said a
I
lot of
think it's
really
too
big
much.
words. I'm a 5-letter kind of guy. And I don't like to confuse my clients. So I just simply say again, hey, I need both of y'all here because since it's insurance, I do gotta talk to both of you. That's it. That's all I tell them. So I have to
Okay,
have both of y'all here, period. You don't have to
don't
explain
overthink it.
Yep,
The
don't
more
overthink
you-
it. You're the boss.
The more you try to explain it, the more you're selling them, the less chances of them agreeing to get the spouse there.
Yep.
Got
And you're gonna confuse them if you use too many words. If you simplify it, they're like, great.
Okay.
And remember, we run the appointment. We decide how I do it. It doesn't even matter if it's legal or not. The way I do business is I need both of you here. So tomorrow, 3 o'clock, today at 3 o'clock, right? Both of y'all gonna be here. That's how I do business, right? Like you don't have to explain it. And they're perfectly fine with it. Again, most of the objections that have never even happened are all in our heads.
Right.
We should do a training on that, James. All the things that could have, should have, would have happened that were created in our head. Jeff knows what I'm talking about. So, and then James, you hit a really good one where you're running your appointment, right? So we booked it, they both shown up. Be very, not be very, right? Do not run random place appointments, right? Like, are they driving? Driving is a big absolute no. I'm driving. I got 30 minutes to get home, right? Because nope, they're not writing down. They're not paying attention. They're driving. They're paying attention to the road, right? They're not hearing you explain living benefits, this, that, whatever it may be. Do not run a driving appointment. Again, you can kiss that puppy goodbye. Another one is lunch, right? So be cautious when you're booking an appointment. Everyone knows when people go to lunch, right? From 11 to about 1. If you're booking between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., I like to ask, hey, is this lunch break? Why are we doing it at this time? Oh, yeah. I can do it from work. Nope. I don't run an appointment at work. They're gonna tell you you're not gonna have enough time because they're trying to eat. Right, so they're not paying attention to you, and then they're not in a proper space where they can answer questions comfortably. So my thing, I love when I get a lunch appointment randomly, right? They'll be like, oh, I'm at lunch, whatever, because sometimes it's in the evening and they're working a night job. I say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna ask you some uncomfortable questions, so that I can do my job properly, and you probably ain't gonna want to answer them out loud. Again, it's not even a choice. So when are you gonna be home? Tomorrow, later today? Again, I decide. I don't care if it's legal or not legal. And what I mean by that, right? I don't have to explain to them, right? So it's not even a technicality. I'm just telling them how I run business. I don't run it during your lunch break because you're not going to have enough time, especially if you're looking to run, right, 4 applications, and if they're on their lunch break, their spouse is usually not there. Again, there's a whole bunch of things wrong if you're trying to run a lunch appointment. And then where they're at, right? They're at an amusement park. I mean, we've heard all kinds of stuff. James, you brought up grocery store. Yeah, I'm just shopping around. Like, nope. When are you gonna get home, right? Allow them to have grace. Don't get upset. Be like, oh, no worries, man. Get something good, right? Like, what are you shopping for? Like, even use it to leverage to build a rapport, right? When you're a brand new agent, you get upset and you sound like, right, like it's an inconvenience. Be very careful with that, right? Again, embrace it. Be like, oh, sweet, what are you shopping for? Right? Like, oh, blah, whatever. They're on their lunch break. Sweet, where do you work again? Right? Oh, sweet, that sounds like a great company, right? Embrace it and then just pivot to when you can reschedule it, right? Don't make it sound like an inconvenience, because let me tell you from my experience of me being rude, believe it or not, I'm rude sometimes, right? I'm not perfect. And I would I would come off like, oh, well, I can't do it while you're at work. Right? That does not sound the same as, oh man, no worries. I want you to enjoy your lunch. Right? Like, what's for lunch? Well, I'm eating Chinese. Sweet. That's my favorite. Right? What time do you get home? 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever, and then rebook, right? Just listen to how you sound. Again, we're upset because we're not getting that appointment right there and then, but it was never an appointment, is what I want to tell y'all. You wouldn't have closed it anyway. So I'm glad you brought that up, James. That was really good. Next, we're going to go to rapport, right? So how do you avoid, think about it's building plenty of rapport. Realize they got to trust you, right? We're asking them to commit to a payment every single month still at the end of the day. Sometimes these payments are $500-600 a month. Even $150 a month is a lot to commit. They got to trust you, right? They got to know you, right? They don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And that rapport is super important, making sure you're asking questions, quality questions. Again, I love to talk about making a deposit before you make a withdrawal, right? So whatever you know on the rapport building, just always think about that. Whatever you know about your client, they should know about you, because that is how you create a friendship, right? Your friends know same thing you know about them, they know about you, right? So it's your job really quick, and the tips I'll give y'all is 10 minutes. It should not take you more than 10 minutes, right? You want to be able to build rapport. We've coached on it's a little tough at the beginning, right? You're going to get that dry question answer, right? Like, hey, where are you from? Texas. Oh, okay. What part of Texas? San Antonio. Right? And you got to keep digging. You want to go 7 questions in at least, right? And so 7 to 15 questions is a sweet spot. And then being tactful about your questions, right? Yes, build rapport off of what you see, if it's basketball or this, but start getting really good information. What really good information? It's in the real script. I'm gonna let y'all go hunt, figure that out, go into the real script. There's actually questions on building rapport. There's even questions about building rapport with folks that are a couple or single, right? So asking those kind of questions. Kids are really good because you want to start having information that you'll be able to use in the appointment, right? So some really good rapport questions is, oh, you have kids? Sweet. Where do your kids live? Right? Because then you get to use it when, hey, Mary, John passes away. I know you're in Arizona now because y'all moved here, right? Because of the climate, whatever it was. But, you mentioned all the kids are still back in Michigan, right? Yeah. They're back in Michigan. And so, John's gone. Like, is the plan to even stay in the home or go back to Michigan? Right. And if I have set up already the full mortgage payoff and they're like, no, I would never stay here. I only came here because of him. He likes to play golf and he likes to, right, go off in his dune buggy. I would definitely go back to Michigan with all my grandbabies. Sweet. You know what? You shouldn't even be showing full mortgage payoff at that point. That is not right for them. They literally told you they're going to leave. And now your job is, hey, you know what? Perfect. I'm glad I asked this question. We're going to look at just what's called equity protection for you, Mary, right? Like we need either 12 months, right? 2 years worth of mortgage payments. That way you're okay when he passes away, and it gives you plenty of time to move back to Michigan, right? Because why am I showing them a $300 policy trying to pay off their $300,000 mortgage? That's not me listening to the client, right? Like that was just a pre-plan, right? Like Amber and me prepped, and she told me to show him the full mortgage payoff because he was 50 or whatever, and where they can afford it. It looks like in their budget, and I showed the full mortgage payoff. But in the appointment, right, I heard, but I didn't react to. They're telling me they're going to sell the house and move, and right. And so understanding exactly what's happening in there is going to avoid a lot of that. And so in your rapport building, it's asking really, really good questions. And stuff that you'll be able to use, right? So that you can leverage it later, right? So James, you're really good at some of the rapport questions that can help you. And Elijah, feel free to give us what y'all do.
Yeah, some of the stuff I asked is a great one is like, hey, where your kids at? Do they live close by? You could even start asking them right there and then, You know, do you think they're gonna move into the house, sell it? If they live with them, obviously, you know, of course, they're gonna want to stay in the house. Um, if they're underage, like they're small little kids, if they're under 18, then you want to be like, who's gonna be the beneficiary, you know, who would take care of the kids. So if they don't know, be like, okay, well, who do the kids go to if they don't have a significant other or anything like that as well. Um, you know, hobbies, a lot of people with pets, real easy to go to, relate to. Um, Stuff like that, just kind of stay in the basics in there and just kind of use that information. Um, as far as that, I mean, it's you got to create it and just feel what's right, but make sure it's stuff that's beneficial. So if they live close by, you know, do you think they'll, if they're older, of course, they have their own mortgage, most likely they'll probably sell the house because, I mean, nobody really wants two mortgages or rent it out. So, hey, we just need a couple months. If they do live in there as well, and if it's a son or, you know, daughter, and they live with the parent, that you do want them to be there present as well if they're older, of course. So best way to gauge it is, you know, if they rely on their income as well, then you probably want them in the appointment as well to make the decision, and that's a great way to get the spouse in there as well, or children there as well. So trying to add on that part is a good option.
I definitely don't have a script for building rapport. I think the best way to build rapport is just have like a couple generic questions that help you just kind of have like an organic conversation with somebody. If you're just chopping it up with the person standing behind you in the grocery line, you're not thinking of a script. You're just kind of making small talk. But you also, I learned this the hard way running appointments in New Jersey. One thing about New Jersey people, they're not really there to chit chat, you know. They're not trying to make a best friend. Very different from what I'm calling folks in North and South Carolina. And so you got to gauge the person you're talking to know when, okay, now I transition to talking about my role and purpose and going over what we're here to talk about. And so you gotta I would put on your EQ glasses, listen to what they're saying, and if you're on Zoom, which you should be, look at their body language. Like, are they trying to rush you off the phone or what have you? Because sometimes people they're ready to just do this, and you just need to build enough rapport to get them to listen to you. Um, I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more too, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Joe. But one of the best ways I build rapport, man, is in my role and purpose. After we get to talking a little bit, I know how many kids they have. I know what kind of dog they got. When did they move? Where are they from? All that kind of stuff we cover first, and then go into my role and purpose. I'm happy to break down like what tell people, because I think my role and purpose is the biggest thing
Yeah.
that helps me avoid to think about it before it comes up.
So that's the next one. The next thing to help, right, with the think about it is the role and purpose. I heard Ashley Tarr on her training. She said, if you don't do a role and purpose, you're kidnapping your client. And what does that mean is, remember, up until this point, you've called them and booked an appointment and you told them, hey, my job in 15, 20 minutes is to go show you some options of what you qualify for, right? You get them on the phone, you just build rapport. Not nowhere up until this point have you told them, we're going to fill out an application today and you need to make a decision today. Nothing in our scripting, nothing in getting them onto this call have we told them that today in our appointment, we are filling out an application and we're going to do this right now. So the role and purpose avoids what we call kidnapping your client, right? Because you're going to go through the whole thing and you're like, okay, pick one. And they're like, whoa, you never said we're going to pick one right now, right? So the role and purpose kind of locks this down. It's simply, in its simple science, is you're just telling them what's about to happen, right? And then they're going to agree. And we're going to dig into the role and purpose kind of, there's a lot of science into it, and we're going to hit on some of those. So Elijah, give us your role and purpose, right? Because dude,
Yeah. So if let's say I'm meeting with Joe, you and Sandra, we've already built rapport. We've talked about the kids. We talked about how you are grilling meat every single Saturday and Sunday and posting about it on Facebook, making us all jealous. I'd say, Joe, just so we're on the same page, I want to make sure you guys know what to expect from me and really what my job is. I work as a caseworker and a field underwriter. Pretty much, that just means I'm an insurance broker for the state of Arizona. My job, more than anything, is to help you guys figure out one, if you even need this coverage. Not everybody needs mortgage protection, but most of the time we find that the family I'm helping ends up needing a little bit less than they think they do. And so we want to figure out kind of which one would fit your needs best. We'll go over what the coverage does and some options to make sure you know exactly how it works. To do that, I'm just going to get a couple questions about the mortgage, a few about your health, and some about what was most important to you, Joe. And we'll go over some numbers. And really, all I ask from you and Sandra is just we got to find one that checks two boxes. It's got to fit your needs and it's got to fit your budget. We won't do anything if it can't check those two boxes. But if we find one you like and it makes sense for you, all I'm going to do this afternoon is I'll help you guys fill out a simple application because we have to figure out if you can get approved for the plan that you want. You're not paying for anything today, but we want to make sure we can get you qualified for the plan. Does that sound good to you?
Yep.
They always say yes. And so that's essentially what my role and purpose is. I let them know we're taking an application. I let them know we're going to ask questions and get personal. I let them know nothing's finalized just yet today. I learned from Grant, one of the things he told me when I was starting to run appointments is like, when you go to the doctor, and I don't go to the doctor often, thankfully, once a year, but they tell you what they're going to do before they do it. You know, they're not just giving you a shot or taking a blood sample or something without explaining why they're doing it or what they're going to do before they do it, so that you know what to expect. And I try to treat the people that we're dealing with the same way. I don't want them to think I'm hijacking them for 4 hours, and I don't want them thinking that everything we do today is set in stone and locked in. Like, the truth is, we get curveballs as far as underwriting goes all the time. Like, I ran an appointment on a lady on Tuesday, told her that exact same role and purpose. We filled out an application. She's been declined 3 times this week, and so we're trying to figure out what to get her approved for. And so having a solid role and purpose will avoid the think about it, because if you don't let them know you're going to be filling out an application, then they feel like you didn't give them the right expectations when you get to the quotes and you're trying to backpedal. You know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And we have a role and purpose already typed up, so we'll post it in band for y'all. And again, the joke that we like to say so that everyone can understand, this is not right the other role and purpose. Why the other role and purpose? It's not the one in the real script, right? The real script has a role and purpose in there, and it kind of goes into it in sections, right? As you're getting the information. This is, I build rapport, then I do my role and purpose, then I jump into the real script. Okay. Ours very similar to Elijah's, right? And we're going to kind of dig into a little bit of the science of why, right? Again, this well, fun fact, let's go with this. So the number one reason for a think about it is you're not doing a role and purpose. That is the number one reason for a role and for a think about it, is you are not doing a role and purpose. So this is super important, making sure you do a really good role and purpose. The way I do mine, right? And we'll post this because we already have it up, but we're kind of, it's identical, right? To Elijah's, right? So the way I do it is I built rapport. Then I even tell them, right? Like, hey, thanks. I want to respect your time. My role and purpose is, Elijah, my job is to simply find you the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium. The way I get to do that is I work with all the insurance carriers that do the mortgage protection. So I shop around for you and do all that work. What we're going to do today is just simply go over any health conditions that you do have. We'll go over your budget a little bit, not to be nosy, just to even see if you need this. I talk to families that don't need it, right? If we do uncover that that's something we can help you with, I'm going to show you several options. You'll be able to pick whichever ones you like, several of them. What my job is to simply fill out the application for you online. I'll fill it out. It'll usually give us an instant approval. That means you're covered as of today and you're protected. If not, it takes a day or two to get approved. But once you're approved, they'll draft out of your account mail you a policy, and you have coverage. That sound good? Everyone says yes, right? If you get a no at that point and it's like 1 out of 100, right? Something's wrong. You're not writing an app. I'd get off the phone with them, right? If they're not willing to say yes, right? So the role and purpose, and I want to dig into this a couple of really quick, right? So again, today's call is to minimize think about it. I got 4 think about it yesterday, right? We're not getting rid of them. We're just minimizing them, right? So I love to talk about the science because again, none of this we created, even though, right, it's ours. We typed it up. This all came from Symmetry training because there's a lot of science in the role and purpose. So I love to talk about the first one is my job is to simply find you the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium. What does that avoid? What think about it does that avoid? Well, let me go shop around and see if this is the best option. Guess what? I already said it. My job is to get you the most amount of coverage, least amount of premium. I work with all the companies in the country that do the mortgage protection. I do that job for you. We've avoided that think about it. The next part is, how do I do my job? Is I work with all the companies, right? So that they can say, well, this other broker worked with this one, and I heard that this company, I work with all of them. Tell me what, right? We're letting them know to avoid other companies, right? We work with all of them. So there is no other company. That's why we're brokers. That's the power of Symmetry. The next part is what we're going to do today is we're going to verify health information so that they're not, right? Has any of y'all ever ran an appointment? Why do you need to know all this? Role and purpose, baby, right? I'm helping you avoid think about it, right? So we're going to verify any health conditions you have, and we'll go over that a little bit. Right? So that when you're in, right, because the role and purpose in the real script, then it digs into it, right? This kind of consolidates everything and lets them know what's about to happen. So the next part is we're going to do the health condition. Then I'm going to go into your budget. How many of y'all have ran an appointment that, why do you need to know all that? Why do you need to know how much money I make? Right? Guess what? Role and purpose, baby. Think about it. Making sure, right, we've asked for permission more than anything. We're letting them know what's going to happen in the appointment. So we've already asked for permission to go into their budget, okay? The next part is we'll do your budget. We're going to uncover if you even need this. So this brings down the wall because I take it away. I don't even know if you need this coverage, right? Not everyone does, right? I like to add that joke in that part of my role and purpose. That's where I even add the joke of, some folks have $1 million. Some folks have a rich uncle. And they're like, I don't have one. So we're going to have to listen to this. We're going to have to do this. The think about it is gone. They already told me they have to do this because they don't have a rich uncle or $1 million, right? The next part is, okay, so we uncover the need. We don't have the $1 million or the rich uncle, right? We've gone through your budget. I'm going to show you several options that I see other families do. I take myself out of the equation. I'm not telling them what I think is best for them. I'm showing them what other families do. Has anyone ever heard of the herd mentality? Everyone wants to do what everyone else is doing. This takes the pressure off of you. I didn't decide, right? So they no longer think Joe's just trying to show them a big application for a commission. I've taken that pressure off of myself and I put it on all the other families I help. Right? So I'm going to show you what other families do. I'm going to show you several options. Science, right? The science in that is they're going to get more than one application. How many of y'all only write one app in a home? How many of y'all would like to write 4 apps in a home? Right? I do. Right? Why? Because we told them, I'm going to show you several options. You'll be able to pick whichever ones you like. I'm using plural. I'm going to show you several. You're going to pick whichever ones you like. Right? Again, so when I get to the options, they're like, yeah, Joe, we'll do this one, right? Let's do the 200,000 accidentals for both of us. And then I'll do the 150 for John and then 100,000 for me. So yeah, all 4 applications. Sweet. Right? Wasn't my idea. That's what other families do. I just simply show you I'm their consultant, right? And then the really big important one here is they've picked them. We're going to write the application today. My job is to simply, right, apply for your coverage online. I'm letting them know. So they don't say, oh, I wasn't ready. I've gotten rid of that think about it. There's a lot of think about it that get gone in your role and purpose. So we'll fill out the application today. Once it's approved, they're going to draft out of your account and you'll have coverage as of today. How many of y'all have ever had, they don't want to give me their bank information? In fact, I had somebody text me that today. They don't want to give me their bank information. You want to know where your resistance is? It's your role and purpose. If you get to think about it for bank information, it's the role and purpose. You never told them you were going to ask them for personal information like a bank account. So, hey, they're going to draft out of your bank. You're going to have a policy. It's going to be approved. Then I even start prepping for declines. If it doesn't get approved today, it'll take a day or two to get approved. So I'm already letting them know there's going to be a process if they're not approved today. So that's the whole thing. And then, does that sound good? Yes, sounds great. Perfect. Everyone says yes, like Elijah said. And again, there is a lot of science of getting rid of think about it or minimizing. Again, think about it in that role and purpose. I can't emphasize it enough. Again, we'll post that one on band, but right, Elijah says it a little bit different. It's all, as long as you're delivering, you shop around, you do the work, you're going to get health information, you're going to do budget, you're going to show several options, you're filling out an application, right? And then they're going to draft out of their bank account. You're good, right? Just make it your own, but you got to emphasize and make sure you don't sound like you're asking questions. And then they'll pull out of your bank account. Nope. I'm making statements. What's going to happen today is this. I'm verifying information. I'm showing you options you're going to pick. We're filling out an app where they're going to draft out of your bank, right? Like I sound like I'm letting them know what the process is. I ain't asking a question. Is this okay? No, you're in my Zoom session. My job is to help you. A doctor doesn't say, is it okay if I kind of, do a physical on you and see if this is something you need? No, you're there at the doctor's office, right? His job is he's going to tell you what's about to happen, right? Like I just had I was at the doctor and the doctor told me what he was going to do to me. I was like, ooh, I'm scared, right? But he told me what was going to happen. It wasn't an option. So just making sure that role and purpose is super strong for y'all. The next one we're going to go into is avoiding to think about it. And the next two are what we call emotional labor related, which is the FIF, making sure you're doing a proper FIF. You have to. It is not, hey, you should add an FIF. You should be doing a financial information form, not the reset. I ain't even talking about that. I'm talking about you should know their budget, how much money's coming into the home, what their expenses are, who brings in how much money. You cannot diagnose mortgage protection if you don't know this information, right? Like I said, if you're a brand new agent, we help you prep, right? We give you a general idea of, hey, you're probably going to show them this because they're young or whatever it may be, right? But that's not the all solution, because you have to go into the appointment and uncover the need through the financial form. That's probably or that's not, so it is the emotional labor, right? Like this is where you get to say statements like, hey, based on what we're looking at, Elijah, you're looking at the same thing as me, we should get coverage today, right? Because I've gone through their budget and I can make statements, right? Like, so, Elijah, you're gone. Maggie, she works very little, so it looks like, your expenses are $6,000 a month and she's bringing in
I
two.
wish.
Every month, right? It looks like she's going to be in the hole $4,000. Like, are we looking at the same thing? That, yeah. Okay. So, Elijah, Maggie, so do y'all agree we should get coverage today?
So good. It's very forward too. And I think I think it was Meredith that said clear is kind, being direct, being clear. It's the way you want to do this. Hold on, the motion light keeps going off. There we go. One of the questions that I ask in the emotional labor section, I use the FIF one too, Joe, that you're mentioning, because that's something I'm working on. Like as a top producer, that's something I've been slacking on because it's not something I've done consistently. But I started asking people, what does the monthly income look like that each of you are bringing in? So I could get the household and then the individual. I get the mortgage amount and whatever like other big bills they have. I'm not asking them what their water bill looks like or whatever. I want to get the big bills. And I ran an appointment on a lady yesterday who's a single mom. She works as a nurse, makes $3,000 a month, has a $1,200 mortgage payment, and is taking care of 5 kids. 5. Her son is grown, lives with her, doesn't really do much. just bought a house and had zero insurance. And I didn't know any of this until I started asking some questions. And I was like, so after all, like the mortgage is paid, before any other bills are paid, we got about $1,800 left. Is that pretty accurate? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, I don't need to get any of your other bills. I know your mortgage isn't your only one, but if something should happen to you, how long could your kids afford to pay for the house? And she was like, 30 days. And I was like, well, we should probably look at putting some coverage today, or putting some coverage in place today. Would you agree? She was like, absolutely. And it was done. The deal was sold at that point. Now it's just, okay, which one are you most comfortable with as far as budget? And for that lady, by the way, we wrote a $69 a month policy. So it wasn't nothing crazy, you know?
And I love that, right? Because we don't, the sale is made on its own. We don't sell anything. We just run a really good appointment, and the really good appointment is in the financial information form. And then I just ask a question if, hey, so it looks like we should put something in place according to what you just told me. Yeah, we do, Joe. Okay, right? You get to ask questions like, hey, so John, you're gone, right? Your income's gone, and y'all very similar to me. My wife doesn't work. She takes care of our 4 kids, so I'm gone. You know, my wife, it wouldn't be a good spot for her. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't look like it would be for Mary either, right? How does that make you feel? Well, Joe, it makes me feel like you better show me something good. They literally tell me that. You better show me something good, Joe. Again, now, right, a question I wrote down. Run a good enough appointment to where the client's telling me why they need coverage. Why the client should be able to tell you by the time you've done their FIF and you've explained what mortgage protection is, the client should be telling you why they need the coverage. Because if they're not, they either 2 things: they don't need it because they're financially sound. You're going to run into appointments where they're financially sound. Husband, wife passes away. They're both okay. Guess what? You're done. Your job is not to sell right there, right? Not everyone needs coverage because they're financially sound, right? Or they don't care about it. And those are not our problems, right? Everyone has had I don't care if I die, they can figure it out. Guess what? You ain't convincing that person of nothing. They don't want coverage. They don't care, right? So think about that. When I run an appointment, my thought process, can I get to the point where I'm blown away that they don't want coverage? And it's either because they can't afford it, right? Because of whatever it may be, or they don't care, right? That's not my job. My job is to run a perfect, as perfect as it can be. Trust me, I miss all kinds of things, right? Like my job is to run as good as appointment as I can, and then let them make the decision. Let me tell you, if you do, the better you get, the more yeses you get, the less think about it come around, and the more multiple policy homes come around, because they're like, crap, well, Joe, I want that one and that one and this one and this. Can I get more coverage? Yeah, absolutely. How much more you want? Right? Those are the appointments you want, right? Because you've avoided more think about it, right? And so just always think, right? The FIF is like the heart and the why and the emotional labor. It's the hardest part because guess what? It's the most uncomfortable questions. How much money are you saving, right? How much money come in? So you're telling me, right, you only have two months worth of savings in your bank account to pay off your, right, for your mortgage payments. Like you got to it's ugly questions, right? But we make our money emotionally, right? So it's asking those really good questions. The next part is I want to hit on to avoid think about it is options, right? So showing whatever you're going to show. I want to make sure we're up against the clock here. We hit these next 2 things. So right before I like to show my options, I like to put declines in front of everyone, right? So like, hey, I'm going to show you a couple of things. I don't make the ultimate decision. The carriers do. So if for some reason they say, you know, they don't like what they saw, right? And I keep it super simple. I stay away from no's, declines, you didn't get approved, right? I don't like to crush their poor little souls, right? Because you can hurt their feelings and then they don't want to do business with you. Like, Elijah, you got declined, dude. So they didn't like that heart attack, and they're like, oh my God. So let's reapply. Like, no, absolutely not. Leave me alone, right? So you got to think of their ego, right? So I'm like, hey, for some reason, Elijah, of whatever we apply for with today, right, with Americo, they don't like it, right? I'm just gonna simply, we'll go over to the next one, right? It's the same everything, right? It's just, my job member is to get you the most amount of coverage for the least amount of premium. So I'm gonna use this one because it's the best for you, right? And then if this one doesn't take you, we'll just go to the next. No big deal. I got plenty of carriers. Elijah, I know you wanted this. I'm gonna get you covered. That's the promise I make. They're like, sweet, Joe, tell me what the process is.
What you make a big deal is a big deal. You know, getting a decline, if this is somebody's first time getting insurance and you make it this whole big deal of like, oh my gosh, you lied to me, or you say something like that. Like I let people know as soon as we submit the application, just like you did, Joe, hey, it's going to take a couple of days for us to hear back from them. Sometimes they just go ahead and approve it. Other times they got follow-up questions. Sometimes people get declined. If in the off chance you get declined, I'm just going to give you a call back and we go with one of these other 35 carriers that I work with. And I just let them know what could happen ahead of time.
Right. Avoid the think about it. How many of y'all have had written a policy and it either got declined or went into underwriting and they're like, well, why? If I'm perfectly healthy. Well, what do you mean? Well, it popped up a question of, it asked an extra question on a kidney disease or diabetes. And they're like, well, I don't have that. Why would they ask that? Well, can we call the company? Right? Like, well, no worries, right? I'll just rewrite it. Nope. I want to know why they're saying that. You did it, right? Avoid the think about it. You didn't tell them it'll probably get declined or there's a possibility and we're going to just go to the next carrier, right? They're surprised. They didn't know it was going to happen, right? How do I avoid that think about it? How many of y'all have never gotten the case back because they didn't want you to anymore? They weren't prepped for it, right? Avoid the think about it. You can't overcome a think about it. You avoid more by doing a really good appointment. So prepping them for that. And then the visual, letting them see the options, right? Again, don't just shout them out and call them out and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, that one. They can't remember 15-year this or that or whatever you're trying to explain. Make them, again, I control. Grab a pen and paper. I like to grab a pen and paper and I'm going to have you write this down. Write this down. And I go one by one and I let them, the reason I like that is because they're only seeing the most amount of coverage. And then they get to tell me, hey, does that sound comfortable? Yep. I don't even have to show the smaller options. They've already told me they're comfortable there. On to the next. I'm going to write that out, right? And then what's really important, or show your slides, right? Either or, but they got to have some kind of visual. So either you make them write it down or you're showing slides, right? If it's over the phone, make them write it down, send them a picture of what you've written down. Like they got to have a visual. People buy visually. Do not just try to call out the orders and think they're going to remember. They got to see it somewhere on pen and paper, force them to write it down or show them the options. And then the next part on that is TMI, too much information. Okay. Does everyone know how life insurance works here on this call? They die, it pays. That's it. I can't tell you how many agents call me and ask me a question about an IUL, about a term, critical illness, chronic illness, all that. You know what I say? I don't know. Because 6.5 years later, I don't know. What I do know, Elijah, is it's $150 a month because it fits your budget and it's going to pay off the entire mortgage for you. Does that sound good? Yes. That's it. If it has living benefits, the only thing I know is heart attack, stroke, or cancer, or any other major illness, it's going to pay out 80%. That's it. That's all I know. And it's a 15-year, 20-year term, or it's a whole life. That's it. I don't know percentages. I don't even know chronic, terminals, riders. I don't know any of that, dude. It's crazy. And I've been in the top 7% of Symmetry sales. And you know why? Because I keep it super simple. TMI, you're going to confuse. Do you know what's the second most think about it? Is they actually got to think about it because they're confused.
Because you showed them 5 options.
Because you showed them 5 different options. You told them, well, this one's a whole life, and then this one's an IUL, and you're going to have growth and percentage of 12 and 8%, and this one's going to have a chronic rider and a critical rider and a terminal rider, and this one's going to pay 90%, this one's going to pay 80%, this one's going to pay 10%, and when they pass away, they're going to do this, and this happens, and also in the insurance board of the technical blah, blah, all these weird fancy words I can't even say, Jeff, because they're not even in my head. Right? There's too much information. Keep it as simple as possible. It's like selling cars. What color is it? Does it fit their need, right? If it's a mom with 6 kids, they need a minivan. If it's a single 20-year-old, he wants a convertible, he likes the color and it fits his budget, puppy sold.
Chris Cook taught us that, right?
He did,
Yeah,
right?
he said, "So what does it do? If they die, it's going to pay off your mortgage."
It's called life
Okay.
insurance, right? And just keep it super simple for that family too. If not, they really do have to think about it, and don't get upset. You gave them a lot to think about. You made it very complicated. You showed them 7 different options. You showed them 15-year, 20-year, IUL, whole life. Like,